Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding a fantasy-themed football simulation. In particular, I'd like to talk about rock, paper, scissors mechanics. So first of all, what do I mean by a rock, paper, scissors mechanic? Well, most of you probably know rock, paper, scissors, sometimes known as Rochambeau, where two players simultaneously choose to make one of three gestures representing rock, paper, and scissors, respectively. And if the two people make different gestures, one of them wins. Rock beats scissors, scissors beats paper, and paper beats rock. So, and the distinctive idea of this game is that you have several choices. None of them are better or worse overall. They're just better or worse depending on what the other player does. So what I mean by a rock, paper, scissors mechanic is a mechanic where there's at least three possible choices. Each of those choices is good against some other choices made by the opponent, or worse against other choices made by the opponent, and hopefully none of them are generally superior or inferior. And what is the point of having such a mechanic? Well, the point of having such a mechanic is that you probably don't want there to be a single best strategy in your game, because if there is a single best strategy in your game, then people can just choose that strategy and win every time. And so the game is only fun until people find that strategy. And then maybe it's fun for a little bit because you're winning, but the novelty soon wears off. It ceases to be challenging or interesting. Now, of course, there's a potential problem with rock, paper, scissors mechanics as well, which is that you eventually go, well, it doesn't really matter which one I pick because it's just random. Yeah, right? If I pick rock, then I'll win if the other guy picks scissors, and I'll lose if the other guy picks paper. But that's not a meaningful. There's no meaningful choice I can make there. I might as well just pick one at random. And then that's, if people come to that realization, or even if they come to believe that it's the case, even though it might objectively not be, well, it seems like that would stop making the game fun, if people want strategy out of your game, at least. So what you want in general, firstly, you don't want the choice to completely determine who wins. You don't want to just go, oh, I'm playing rock and he's playing scissors, so I'm going to win. It's just going to take 15 minutes or whatever, but I know that I'm going to win because I've picked the advantageous one, or vice versa. Oh, I know I'm going to lose because I've picked the wrong one. You want maybe these choices to give an advantage or a disadvantage, but not to be completely... Not to completely determine what happens. You want the game to be a little bit more complicated than that. You want that to be one of the choices that you make, and maybe okay, now it's working, or no, in this case it's going to disadvantage me, but I've still got to engage with the game because I haven't necessarily lost yet. There's other choices that I can make that can affect what happens. And that, of course, is easier said than done, but that's an aim. So I'll give you an example of a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. This is a real one from a fantasy-themed war board game. And in that game, there's three types of units. There's different classifications of units, but one of the classifications of units is into one of three types, which are ranged, melee, and flying. And the mechanical consequence of that is that flying units can avoid melee units, because the idea is the melee units are on the ground waving their swords and the flying units just fly over them. But they can't do that to ranged units. Ranged units can attack flying units because in the fiction of the game they're hurling arrows up into the sky or whatever it may be. But having a ranged unit, it gives you that advantage against flying units, but it doesn't give you any advantage against melee units, which may not be terribly realistic, but this is what happens in the game. And so I think the ranged units cost more. And so if you spend money or, the in-game currency to get a ranged unit and you're facing a melee unit, you've sort of wasted money. So melee units are sort of better against ranged units. Ranged units are better against flying units, and then flying units are better against melee units. So you have this, none of the three are the best choice. It's just that one of them's the best choice against one other choice, and it's the worst choice against the third choice. So, having explained the concept in general, I now want to talk about a few ideas that I've had for mechanics for my specific game. As you would have known if you've seen the last video, the idea is that you will have a character who will have various attributes like strength and intelligence and agility and so on, charisma, etc. You will also have a team of non-player characters who will also have these stats, and a lot of what happens in the game will depend on the stats of your team and the team that you're playing a match against. So here are some examples of how we could have three-way. Well, in this case, they are all three. When I say a rock, paper, scissors mechanic, I don't mean that you have to have literally three choices. You could have more. Obviously, it's more complicated to design ones with more units, but these particular ones have three options each. So I'll just read out what's written in the document. First of all, teams with high size intimidate teams with low willpower, but players with high size are less good against teams that aren't intimidated. So maybe in the fiction of the game, little players can sort of slip through the legs of big players or can dodge around big players. Maybe they can run faster because it takes more muscle to move more bulk. Maybe your speed is dependent on your strength, but also size makes you less fast. That seems fairly realistic. And so here's a three-way mechanic. If you've got high size, you'll intimidate a team with low willpower. So high size is best against low willpower. But if you've got sort of high willpower without the size, then you're better against the teams with high size. And then teams with low willpower, because the higher the stats a player has, with the possible exception of size, the higher the stats a player has, the more expensive that player is going to be. So if you have a team with low willpower, you've sort of saved money by buying these cheaper players because they've got low willpower, they're cheaper. And if you don't face any high size teams, that's money well spent because the low willpower doesn't suffer any disadvantage. And so there's a three-way, well, what I'm calling a rock, paper, scissors mechanical. Second example, you can learn specific passing attacks. So I think I said last video I want to have a mechanic where it says a wandering sage comes into your town and offers to teach you this specific thing. And maybe there's some sort of auction, so you bid a certain amount to learn the secret, and then the other teams that are computer controlled will bid a certain amount, and whoever bids highest will win. You can learn specific passing attacks. You can learn specific defenses against passing attacks, which shut down those attacks, but are obviously useless against teams which don't use them. So again, if you learn these attacks and no one learns the defense, you've spent your money well in learning the attacks. If you learn the defenses, that's good against teams that have learnt the attacks, because presumably learning the defences is cheaper than learning the attacks. But you've wasted your money if you don't face any teams that have learnt these attacks. So again, a three-way option. This one works in more or less the same way. You can learn trick plays, which work best against teams with low intelligence. So this is something that happens in real American football in particular. There's certain types of plays where you sort of mislead the other team as to what's happening, and hopefully their defense is sort of wrong-footed, and that makes you able to gain yards, which is move the ball down the field, which of course is the point. You can learn various trick plays which work best against teams with low intelligence, and the plays don't work against teams with high intelligence, and having low intelligence is a good use of points if the other teams don't know those plays, because again, you've saved money by not buying the more expensive high intelligence players. So those are just some examples. I would like to do at least a few more before I start coding. As I've said before, compared to previous projects, I'm a little bit less sure about what to do, and therefore I'm reluctant to sort of jump in and start coding in case I find that what I've coded isn't what the end game is going to be, and so I waste my time. Which is not really true when you're just adapting a board game, of course. You just look at the rules and, start adapting the rules. So I would like to spend at least one more video looking at mechanics. I may try and come up with some more of these examples of rock, paper, scissors mechanics. I've made this document downloadable on itch.io, link in the description, if you want to have a look at it. And I will, of course, as I update it, I will update the version on itch.io. So that's probably what I'll be doing in at least the next video, and hopefully soon after that I can start actually programming. But I will leave it there for now. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.